Right now, in this room, being alone is changing your brain. Not later, not years from now, right now, while you're sitting there. Your stress system is adjusting. The part of your brain that is daydreaming is switching on. And somewhere in there, a signal is firing that your body normally saves for getting hurt. And here's why that matters more than it sounds. Whatever your brain is doing with the time you spend alone, it's doing it every single day. On the commute, in the empty apartment, in the hour before you fall asleep. That adds up. It shapes how well you sleep, how clearly you think, how much patience you have with people, how well you wake up. Most people never even notice that this is happening. They just notice that some weeks feel heavy and some weeks feel light, and they blame work, weather or themselves. But there's a system running underneath all of it, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Because here's the strange part. Two people can spend the exact same weekend alone. Same empty apartment, same silence, same number of hours. One comes out sharper, calmer, like something got put back together. The other one comes out worse, foggy, tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix it. Same amount of time alone, opposite result. For a long time nobody could explain this. By the end of this, you'll know exactly what splits those two people apart. And it isn't willpower, and it isn't whether you're an introvert. To understand it, you need to know what your brain was actually built to do. For almost all of human history, being alone was not peaceful. It was dangerous. Get separated from your group and your chances drop fast. No one to watch while you slept. No one to share food when you found none. So your brain built something like an alarm, not a thought, an alarm, a quiet background count of how connected you are, running the same way your body quietly counts how much water you have. And when the count runs low, it doesn't tell you politely. It doesn't say you should probably call someone. It makes you restless. It makes you check your phone for no reason. It makes you open the fridge and stand there. That's the alarm. You felt it 1,000 times and probably never once called it what it is. But the alarm has a detail almost nobody knows about. It didn't get built from scratch. It borrowed something. Researchers put people in a brain scanner and had them play a simple ball passing game with two other players on a screen. Then the two players stopped throwing them the ball. That's it. That's the whole experiment. A game of catch with strangers online. The exclusion activated some of the same brain regions researchers had already linked to the distress of physical pain. Not an identical experience, but an overlap that was hard to ignore. Your brain seems to reuse some of the machinery involved in physical distress when social connection breaks down, which explains something you have definitely felt and probably never had words for. Why being left out can sit in your chest. Why an unanswered message can feel like a small physical thing rather than just a thought. That's not proof that social and physical pain are the same thing. They aren't, but the overlap tells you how seriously the brain can treat disconnection. If being disconnected can recruit systems tied to distress, then there's a question that should bother you. Why does anyone ever want solitude? Why do writers lock themselves in cabins on purpose? Why do monks choose it for life? And why does almost every single person want some alone time during the week? If being alone were only damage, nobody would ever go looking for it. And people go look for it constantly. So the alarm can't be the whole story. There's a second thing happening. When you stop paying attention to the outside world, your brain doesn't switch off. It switches channels. A whole network comes online that only really runs when nothing is pulling at your focus. It's the one behind daydreaming, remembering, imagining tomorrow, thinking about who you are and where you're going. This is where your brain does its filling. Everything that happened today is sitting in a pile, unsorted. The network is what sorts it. It takes the argument you had this morning and quietly connects it to something you had 6 years ago. It turns raw experience into something you can actually use. And it needs quiet to run. It cannot do this while you're in a meeting, it cannot do this while you're scrolling. That's why the good ideas arrive in the shower and not at the desk. That's why the answer shows up on the walk home. You weren't being lazy, you were finally giving that network the room it needed. So now you have two systems and they want opposite things. One treats being alone as a problem that needs fixing right now, the other treats it as the only condition where certain kinds of thinking can happen at all. Same silence, two completely different different responses to it, and which one you get is no luck. Think about what actually has to be true for that feeling network to run. It needs your attention free. It needs nothing urgent pulling at you. Now think about what the alarm does. It pulls at you constantly. That's its entire job. The louder the alarm gets, the harder it becomes for that feeling network to get uninterrupted room. In 1962, a 23-year-old French speleologist named Michael Siffre climbed down into an underground glacier in the Alps with an unusual plan. He was going to stay there for 2 months, alone, no clock, no calendar. No sunlight telling him when a day had ended. A team waited at the surface, but they were not allowed to tell him the time. Siffre called them when he woke up, when he ate, and when he went to sleep. Other than that, his body had to decide the rhythm. And the important part is, he chose it. He wanted to be there. The isolation had a purpose, but choice did not make his brain immune to the conditions. When the surface team finally told him the experiment had reached its planned end, Siffre was stunned. He thought it was only August 20. He believed he still had roughly another month underground. Without the normal signals that divide life into hours and days, his experience of time had drifted dramatically. Siffre's cave is an extreme case, but it reveals something important. Choosing solitude can change what being alone means to you. It does not mean context stops mattering. Connection matters. Choice is powerful. It just isn't magic. Which brings us back to those two people. Same weekend, same apartment, opposite results. The difference was not simply how many hours they spent alone. One of the biggest variables is whether the solitude felt chosen. When you choose time alone, it can feel self-directed instead of imposed. There is no social problem you are urgently trying to solve. That gives the quieter, reflective side of the brain a better chance to take over. When being alone is not what you wanted, the alarm is more likely to keep pulling at your attention. Same room, same silence, completely different meaning. Choice is not the whole equation. Siffre makes that clear. But it does change what the silence is telling you. But there's a wrinkle that catches almost everyone. You can be surrounded by people all day and still set off the alarm. Because the system isn't counting bodies in the room, it never was. It's counting whether you feel understood by the people in it. That's why a full office can score lower than an empty apartment. That's why you can leave a party feeling worse than when you arrived. Nothing bad happened, the count just didn't go up. And that's why the usual advice, go out more, see more people, misses so often. More people is not the same input. It never was. One conversation where somebody actually gets it does more for that count than an entire week of being near strangers. And this matters because the alarm doesn't stay in your head. A stress signal that never gets to switch off shows up in the body, in how you sleep, in how your immune system responds, in how the heart handles strain over the years. Not because being alone is bad for you, being alone is fine. It's a stress signal that never gets to reset that isn't. The alarm was designed to spike, get you to act and go quiet again. Spike, act, reset. The modern problem isn't that people are alone more, is that for a lot of people the last step stopped happening. So what do you actually do with it? The answer is smaller than you'd expect. You don't necessarily need more people around you. You need the alarm to get a chance to reset. That can mean connection where you feel actually seen, not just more people in the room. Sometimes one real conversation can matter more than hours of shallow contact, and once it's quiet, the other system finally gets its turn. That's the moment solitude flips from taking something to giving something back, which is where the old philosophers become interesting. Long before anyone put a brain in a scanner, they kept returning to the idea that solitude could be a place where a person meets themselves more clearly. Marcus Aurelius wrote about retreating inward. Camus kept returning to silence, distance, and the inner life. They did not know the neuroscience. They simply noticed that some forms of solitude seem to be doing something useful. And you've noticed it too. Some silences left you emptier than they found you. Some leave you more like yourself. Now you know they were never the same silence.